So how should Canada respond to this latest salvo from Trump? And how much of this is theater? How much actually reflects the foreign policy and trade policy from the U.S. government? We have acclaimed American economist Robert Reich standing by. He's the Chancellor's Professor of Public Policy at the University of California, Berkeley. He was also, of course, the Secretary of Labor during the Clinton administration. Today he joins us from Boston. Welcome back to the show, sir. It's nice to see you. What do you think actually happened on the weekend at the G7, and how damaging do you think it can be?
Well, Peter, it can be damaging, certainly in terms of the public's understanding of what's happening. Now, Donald Trump, his own ego, his own tendency to go simply off script, well, one never knows what is in his head. I think it's basically Donald Trump is the only thing in his head. He doesn't have much advice in terms of international policy, trade policy. He's got some hot heads around him like Peter Navarro. I think that nobody in Canada should take terribly seriously just the rhetoric. But the tariffs and the threats of tariffs on steel and even on autos, those are real threats. They make no sense economically. They make no sense politically. I hope everyone in Canada knows that the majority of Americans think of Canada as it should be thought of, as our neighbor, our friend, our closest ally, our closest trading partner. This is really inexplicable. I think that these tariffs and what Donald Trump is trying to do is pick fights. He's bullying. He is trying to look tough in terms of his meeting with Kim in Korea, in Singapore actually right now. But this has no fundamental basis in sound economic or political policy.
And that, I think, is what sort of presents the most difficult dilemma for Canadian policymakers to try to push back against, because there isn't a lot of rationality in what is being said. And so we parse it and say, well, first it was about national security, and then it was about the steel industry, and now it's about dairy. Do you have a sense of what Trump actually wants and would like to accomplish beyond something just vaguely a win? Is there something he would like to actually get done to make better that we could understand and then actually sit down and try to negotiate against?
Peter, it is impossible to know what is in Donald Trump's head, except for Donald Trump's own instinct to bully. I mean, he is a bully, and I think that my advice to Canada is the same as my advice to Europe, and that is to stand up to bullies. Threaten retaliatory tariffs, get together with Europe and other nations that are facing the same irrational policy, and in unity, there is going to be a great deal of strength. I mean, Donald Trump, if he were rational at all, he would know that he needs Europe, he needs Canada, he needs Japan in terms of dealing with China and trying to deal with China's, China does pose a trading threat and a trading problem, but he's never going to get anywhere with China if he doesn't have America's traditional trade allies and friends with him. And that's why it is so important for Canada to stand up to this bully and also to join with Europe and Japan in creating a kind of a united response. That's the only way bullies can be brought to basically brought to their own responsibility.
And I think the greatest hope of that happening is from what we saw over the weekend, where he kind of, took this swipe at Canada and may have unified the G6 to act against him. I wondered very quickly before you go, what role and what responsibility do you see for Congress in all of this? They've given the executive the authority to negotiate these trade deals. They could take it back if they wanted to. Does Congress have a responsibility in trying to rein some of this in?
I think Congress has a huge responsibility, Peter. The problem is Republicans really now control both the House and the Senate, and about 70% of their Republican constituents, not their constituents overall, not their independents, not their Democrats, but about 70% of their Republican constituents are very strong Donald Trump supporters. So unless members of Congress who are Republicans take a very broad view of their responsibilities and say, we owe it to the nation and the world to act responsibly, it is not just a matter of being reelected, we're just going to have them rubber stamp Donald Trump. The Republican Party is no longer a party of free trade. It's no longer a party of any principle. The Republican Party is now the party of Donald Trump.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there. I really do appreciate making time to speak with us today. Robert Reich, Chancellor's Professor of Public Policy, University of California at Berkeley, and the Secretary of Labor under President Bill Clinton. Thank you, sir.